Hello, my name is Kristen Richards. The following presentation is based on the action research project I have completed during the fall semester of 2013 at Carson Newman University. It is titled Business Education. In the past, it has taken America falling behind other countries for a change in education to occur. For example, the launch of Sputnik 1 generated a desperate attempt in America to educate its youth. For this reason, America is constantly playing catch-up with other countries. According to a recent study by the Educational Committee of Pearson, the United States ranks 17th in the Global Index of Cognitive Skills and Educational Attainment. If you follow the link on this page, you will see some of the other countries that are ahead of the USA. Clearly, America has a vast amount of room for improvement. One method recent legislators have created in order to decrease the gap in educational achievement in America is a standards-based initiative. The national standards that America has adopted are known as the Common Core State Standards, also known as CCSS. The mission statement of CCSS reads as follows. The Common Core State Standards provide a consistent, clear understanding of what students are expected to learn, so teachers and parents know what they need to do to help them. The standards are designed to be robust and relevant to the real world, reflecting the knowledge and skills that our young people need for success in college and careers. With American students fully prepared for their future, our communities will be best positioned to compete successfully in the global economy. This action research project has been designed in order to assess the implementation of standards in the business classroom. As America is turning into a standards-based education system, it is important that teachers learn and can effectively implement standards into the classroom. It is important to note that this study has not been designed to determine the effectiveness of those standards. Instead, it is to see if business teachers are implementing the standards that they have been required to use. The history of business education can be traced to the 1600s when the Puritans started the first known vocational schools. If you fast forward approximately 200 years, the first private business school and first public high school were built. Various legislation has also had a significant impact on business education. In fact, the Vocational Education Act of 1963 led to the first federal funding for business and office education curriculum. The No Child Left Behind Act of 2002 also provided many programs that taught personal finance and economics with federal funding. Finally, according to an author for the Wall Street Journal, in 2005, more than 75 bills were passed to require personal finance and economics to be taught in public education. All of these pieces of legislation have had a tremendous impact on business education. The purpose of business education is continually evolving due to constant changes in technology and legislation. Today, business courses are seeking to educate its students in three typical areas: leadership, communication, and interpersonal skills. This is completely different from the past in which business education consisted of teaching students direct tasks and skills. Business education at the secondary level is for the purpose of developing well-informed students about business and economic concepts so they can have a positive effect on our society upon graduation. It is important to keep in mind that due to constant changes in technology and legislation, the purpose of business education is sure to change again in the future. There are numerous standards that teachers can use for structuring the content of their class. In fact, the following items are some standards that are suggested to be frequently used in the business classroom: Common Core State Standards, Tennessee Curriculum Standards, National Business Education Association Standards, the International Society for Technology and Education Standards, and National Educational Technology Standards. You may follow the links on each acronym to attain the website. Due to the bribe of federal funding for adopting the national standards, many states have accepted the challenge to incorporate CCSS in their education without determining the effectiveness of such standards. In the state of Tennessee, the business teachers are told to use the Tennessee curriculum standards for their course of instruction and to also implement the CCSS in all ways possible. Again, the purpose of this action research project is to determine if the business teachers are truly incorporating the standards on a daily basis, as suggested by those who are setting the laws for teachers across the state of Tennessee. According to an author from USA Today, the most significant advantages the standards have offered individual students are the ability to think on their own, persuade others of their opinions, and communicate effectively with diverse people. I like to think that standards also provide students an ability to know exactly what they are supposed to learn in a particular setting. For instance, I always preferred to have an agenda or study guide that told me what I needed to know for the end of a period. Standards do a great job at achieving that task. As does anything else, standards also have their drawbacks for students. For instance, the national standards created focus more on mathematics, science, and language arts rather than courses like business education. Perhaps the most significant disadvantage that standards create is the idea of a one-size-fits-all education, when in fact, no two students learn in the same way, at the same time, or the same information. What works best for one child may not work best for the next. A lot of the success or failure of standard implementation lies on the teacher's shoulders as he or she implements it in their instruction. With this being said, it is important to evaluate the impact standards have on teachers as well. Due to the nature of state and national standards, at times teachers must change their physical environment and their instructional strategies to meet the needs of the standards that are to be implemented. This can either have a negative or positive impact on a teacher based on the teacher's feelings about change in his or her own classroom. There are many more ripples that these standards have caused for teachers, but most of the ripples are in a way due to other sources as well. For instance, the tie of standards to the new evaluation system in Tennessee. So for the nature of this assignment, those ripples will not be further discussed. Undoubtedly, there are many different aspects of instruction that go into business education and education in general. Because technology and industry are such integral parts of business education, the varying components that teachers must include into their teaching is more diverse than most other subjects. Teachers in business courses must ensure the content is relevant, up to date, and on mark with the standards provided, as well as the industry needs and technological advances. I truly feel standards are needed to help teachers guide the curriculum, but are they implemented in the business classroom on a daily basis? The school in which this action research project took place is located in East Tennessee. It is a secondary school that educates over 1,300 students. Approximately 46% of the students at this school are economically disadvantaged. There are almost 90 teachers at this specific school, 10 of which are career technology education teachers, also known by its acronym CTE, which are considered to be business teachers. The participants for the data collection were the 10 CTE teachers in their classrooms. The participants' ages range from upper 20s to mid-50s. The ethnic diversity of the 10 CTE teachers is relatively low, having all teachers but 2 of the same ethnicity. On the other hand, there is a wide variety of teacher experience as determined through the years of an individual teaching. There are 3 forms of data collection used for this project: surveys, observation, and interviews. The surveys were distributed to all 10 CTE teachers through the use of their school mailbox. The survey included 10 questions and an area for additional comments. The questions pertained directly to standard implementation in the classroom, along with some generic background questions. The surveys were returned in one of 3 ways: directly, through the school mailboxes, or electronically through email. The second form of data collection was the observation of multiple classrooms. For these classroom observations, I sat in 3 business classrooms and 3 mathematics classrooms. I wanted to sit in the mathematics classrooms to compare the structures of both business and non-business courses. I chose mathematics because it is also a subject area I would like to teach. Finally, I had the opportunity to interview 2 teachers about their personal thoughts, ideas, and opinions about incorporating standards in the classroom. The interviews were completed in a one-to-one setting in that teacher's classroom during their planning period. The rationale behind me choosing this topic is simply because I want to know more. I want to know more about what is expected of teachers. I want to know more about what teachers expect of education, and I want to know more about how teachers operate in the classroom. Once the surveys, observations, and interviews were completed, the results and answers were keyed into a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. The spreadsheet allowed me to compare the results more easily than any other way. The spreadsheet also allowed me to create the charts you will be viewing shortly. There were several important results of the survey. 7 out of 10 teachers say that they create a lesson plan incorporating standards for every lesson they teach. Pay particular attention to this statistic because it will be the topic of a later discussion. In the survey, I also asked teachers to record the resources they use to find standards to build their instructional material. Please note, in the state of Tennessee, it is only mandatory for teachers to incorporate CCSS and TC standards, also standing for Common Core State Standards and Tennessee Curriculum Standards. All 10 teachers replied that they use both of those resources. However, one teacher replied that he uses the National Business Education Association standards. 2 teachers replied that they use the International Society for Technology and Education standards. And 3 teachers replied that they use the National Education Technology standards. It was interesting to see that some teachers use multiple resources that are not mandatory, while other teachers only use the resources that are mandatory. One surprising statistic I found due to the survey is that all teachers agreed that a standards-based educational system will lead to an improved student learning for the majority of students they serve. However, their thoughts were not the same about the national standards that Tennessee has adopted. There was an open-ended question for the teachers to answer. Out of all 10 surveys I handed out, I only had 3 teachers to respond. The question was as follows: what is your ideal education system? One response read, for CTE teachers, I believe teachers should not have more than 2 preparation subjects at a time to better prepare for lessons. For 15 years, I have taught 3 preparations at one time. This is unfair to the students because my lessons are not as in-depth and detailed. The second response read, state standards that are generated by the business sectors to include the arts, legal, political, and farming sectors. They understand what is needed to enter the workforce. And the third response read, a system where students can learn and where teachers can teach their subject matter instead of teaching to a test. For the additional comments results, I only had 1 teacher respond out of 10. It read as follows: I have found that in this county, the business teachers are required to teach all information technology classes, even though they lack information technology degrees. Business teachers do not teach business classes anymore in this county. During the classroom observations, I was able to sit in 3 business classrooms and 3 mathematics classrooms. I was looking for one item in particular. Did these teachers incorporate standards in their lessons or did they not? I was completely shocked at the results I found. In all 3 business courses, the standards for the lessons were never stated, explained, or displayed. On the other hand, in all 3 mathematics courses, I was able to observe the standards. They were either stated, explained, displayed, or a combination of the 3. There were also some significant techniques I learned throughout the math courses that related specifically to methods of incorporating standards into the lesson, but that is another discussion in its own. Through the interviews of 2 business teachers, I received the following comment. I don't always tell the students the standards because they are like, and why did I need to know this? So instead of telling the students or showing the students the standards, I just use them to guide what I'm teaching. I also found in these 2 interviews that their opinion of national standards does not match their opinion of standards-based educational system. In fact, both teachers had only negative things to add about the CCSS. On the other hand, the teachers liked the framework of the TC standards. As I first began reading the replies on the surveys, the results were surprising. By that time, I had managed to do an observation of the business classroom, and I knew the results did not match. For instance, the data that I gathered from the surveys concluded that all 10 business teachers used both CCSS and TC standards to create their lesson plans on a daily time frame. However, the observation of these same classes showed that teachers were not incorporating these standards. That is when I decided I needed an interview with at least 2 teachers to determine the reasoning behind this. During the interviews with the 2 business teachers, I found that the statistics I gathered from the other 2 methods of data collection were in fact correct. The teachers have been using the standards to guide their lesson planning, but they do not always communicate the standards to the students. There are some limitations to the study. The first limitation is the time frame of the study. If teachers were observed for a longer period, the results would be more reliable. Perhaps the most significant limitation is the sample size. This project only had a sample size of 10 teachers. With a larger sample size, the results would be more valid. Also, with a more diverse sample, the results would be more accurate of true state statistics. If I could do this project again, I would include more business teachers from a wider variety of locations and school systems. I would also open the surveys, observations, and interviews up to teachers of more disciplines. Now that I have completed this study, I'm interested in finding out if teachers in other disciplines do the same thing as the business teachers did, or the same thing as the mathematics teachers did. Another limitation of this study is that tie that standards have to evaluations and the tie that evaluations have with teacher job security. I tried to ensure all teachers that their personal information would not be shared with anyone for this project, but I still believe some teachers were hesitant to speak their minds on paper. In the future, I would create a method in which the teachers felt more comfortable in sharing their own opinions for use of the survey. Business teachers, at least in this school, are using a small variety of standards to guide the lesson structure. The business teachers, however, rarely communicate the standards to students. Without observing the teacher's actual lesson planning techniques, it is hard to determine if this conclusion is fact or fiction. Regardless of that result, these business teachers need to do a better job at relaying the standards to the students, so the students have an understanding of their expectations. To conclude, the findings of this research study indicate that business teachers in this school are not incorporating standards in the way legislature has meant them to. If teachers begin to incorporate the standards as intended, will that make a difference in student success? The truth is, if teachers are not held accountable for incorporating standards as intended, the answer to that question may never be known. Thank you so much for your time. May you have a wonderful and blessed day.